Hey, for letting my husband mock me until his bank records exposed his lies? By 59, I had been Richard's wife for 34 years, long enough to know the difference between a joke and a warning. I'm Olivia, and for most of my marriage, people thought I was quiet because I had nothing to say. The truth was simpler than that. I learned early that arguing with Richard over breakfast, bank statements, or which bills mysteriously disappeared into his desk drawer only gave him another chance to talk over me. So I kept my coffee hot, my face calm, and my questions written down where he couldn't interrupt them. Richard was 61, polished in that way men get when they've spent decades being believed before anyone checks the facts. He never had to raise his voice to make a room lean his way. He just smiled, adjusted his glasses and said things like, "I handle the serious stuff," while everyone nodded as if that was wisdom instead of control. Our daughter Caroline was 33 and always wanted peace so badly she sometimes mistook silence for it. Our son Daniel was 30 and quieter than his sister, but he noticed things. He noticed when his father's jokes came too quickly. He noticed when I stopped answering. Richard's sister Elaine was there that night too, sitting beside him like she had been invited as a witness. Elaine was 64, and she had always treated Richard like the family's official adult, even though he once forgot his own mother's medication schedule and blamed the pharmacy. To Elaine, Richard's confidence was the same thing as competence. We were at Caroline's house for a Sunday dinner she had begged us to attend. She said she wanted one normal meal, before the divorce became all anybody talked about. She roasted chicken, made mashed potatoes, lit a candle she usually saved for holidays, and set the table with cloth napkins as if good manners could hold a family together. Richard arrived with a manila envelope. I noticed it right away because he placed it beside his plate instead of in his briefcase. He wanted me to see it. He wanted everyone to see it. For the first 20 minutes he performed. He asked Daniel about work. He complimented Caroline's potatoes. He told Elaine she looked rested. Then he reached for the envelope halfway through dinner, cleared his throat and said, "Since we're all here, I think it's time we stop pretending this has to be complicated." Caroline froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Dad," Daniel said quietly. Richard ignored him. He pulled out a stack of papers with yellow highlights and placed them between the serving bowl and my water glass. "I've had a very fair proposal drawn up," he said. "Clean, quick, better for everyone." I looked at the first page. Settlement agreement. Deadline, 48 hours. Confidentiality. Waiver of further discovery. Personal effects to be divided by mutual agreement. Financial accounts as disclosed. Those last two words sat on the page like a locked door. "As disclosed," I said. Richard smiled. "Yes, Olivia. As listed. It's standard." Elaine gave a little cough that was almost a laugh. "It really is better to be realistic." Caroline whispered, "Can we not do this at dinner?" Richard slid the papers closer to me. "Your mother doesn't need a scene. She needs clarity." I turned a page. The house terms were vague. The retirement accounts were summarized in a way that made them look smaller than I knew they were. There was no mention of one account I had seen in an email preview 3 months earlier. There was a confidentiality clause that looked less like privacy and more like a gag. "You want me to sign this in 48 hours? I asked. Richard sat back. "I want you to be reasonable." That wasn't my question. His smile tightened. "You'll be taken care of if you don't turn this into a war." Elaine leaned forward. "Olivia, don't make it ugly. You had a comfortable life. That matters." Richard tapped the highlighted page with 2 fingers. "Sign it, Olivia. You never understood money anyway." The room went quiet except for the soft hum of Caroline's refrigerator. She looked down at her plate. Elaine smiled like she was embarrassed for me. Daniel's jaw flexed once. I had imagined this moment many times after Richard filed for divorce. I thought I might shake. I thought I might cry. I thought that after 34 years of being corrected in my own kitchen, talked over in my own life, and treated like a guest in decisions that shaped my future, I might finally explode. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out the blue folder. Richard's eyes flicked toward it. I placed it on the table beside his settlement papers. "I'm not signing anything I didn't choose," I said. Elaine's smile faded. Richard laughed once. "What is that supposed to be?" A reason for you to stop talking like I came unprepared. Caroline looked up. Mom. I did not open the folder then. I only let Richard see the tab on top. Transfers. His face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. That was the first time all night I felt sure I had done the right thing. Richard's control over money had not started as obvious cruelty. It started the way water stains start on a ceiling. Faint, easy to dismiss, and only alarming after the damage spreads. In the early years he paid the bills because he liked spreadsheets and I was busy with babies, groceries, school forms, dentist appointments, and the endless invisible work that somehow did not count as management unless a man put it in a binder. He would sit at the kitchen table with a calculator and a cup of black coffee, marking things with a pen. Can I see what we owe this month? I asked once. It's not that complicated, Liv, he said without looking up. Let me handle it. That sentence followed me for 3 decades. When I asked why a bank envelope was already opened, he said, You worry too much. When I asked why a credit card statement had a transfer I did not recognize, he said, It's moving money around. You wouldn't understand. When I asked about retirement accounts at a barbecue, he laughed and told his brother-in-law, Olivia thinks the 401k is a kitchen appliance. Everyone laughed because Richard made it sound harmless. I smiled because I had learned the cost of not smiling. The worst part was that he rarely lied in one big dramatic way. He shaved truth down until it fit his version of events. He never said I was stupid outright. He said I was not numbers-oriented. He never said I had no say. He said, I don't want to burden you. He never said he owned everything. He said, I've taken care of this family. After enough years, people stopped asking what I had done. They only asked what Richard had decided. By the time the children were grown, our marriage looked respectable from the outside. We remembered birthdays. We hosted Thanksgiving. We sat together at graduations and smiled for photos. But inside the house, Richard had turned every practical conversation into a reminder that he considered me a passenger. Then one Thursday morning, while I was rinsing a coffee mug, he walked into the kitchen wearing the calm expression he used for bad news he had already spun in his favor. I filed yesterday, he said. I turned off the faucet. For divorce. He sighed like my question had tired him. Yes, Olivia. For divorce. I looked at the water dripping from the mug into the sink. You filed yesterday and you're telling me today? I wanted the paperwork in order first. Of course he did. He stood near the island, hands in his pockets, not sad, not conflicted, just prepared. I don't want this to be messy, he said. If you're reasonable, you'll be fine. There it was again. Reasonable. His favorite word for obedient. What does fine mean? I asked. It means you won't be abandoned. I laughed then just once because I couldn't help it. His eyebrows lifted. Something funny? No, I said. Just hearing you describe basic legal obligations like charity. His face cooled. I would be careful with that tone. Or what? He looked past me at the sink, the mug, the dish towel folded over the handle. Or this becomes harder than it needs to be. That afternoon he sent a message to our family group chat. Richard, I told your mother this morning. Divorce is never easy, but I'm committed to keeping things respectful and fair. Caroline replied first. Caroline, I love you both. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Daniel did not respond for nearly an hour. Daniel, are you both okay? Richard answered before I could. Richard, I'm okay. Your mother is upset, understandably. She'll be taken care of if she stays practical. I typed 3 different responses and deleted all of them. Then I took a screenshot. That became my new habit. Screenshot, save, breathe. Screenshot, save, breathe. 2 days later, Richard took Caroline and Daniel to lunch without telling me. I found out because Caroline called afterward, her voice soft and strained. Mom, Dad said he offered you a fair deal. He hasn't offered me anything yet. There was a pause. He said you were already talking about lawyers. I haven't told him that. So you are. I closed my eyes. Caroline, I'm going to review anything I'm asked to sign. That's not making it ugly. I just don't want this to turn into some horrible fight. Neither do I. Dad said you might be emotional about the house. I looked around the kitchen where I had packed lunches, cleaned fevers from countertops, signed school permission slips, and stood alone after arguments pretending I needed a glass of water. I'm allowed to be emotional about my life, I said. That doesn't make me irrational. She exhaled. I know. I hate this. So do I. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at a drawer where Richard kept old statements. The drawer had a small brass handle that clicked when it shut. I had heard that click so many times over the years. Bills going in, questions getting shut out. That night, while Richard was in the shower, our shared tablet lit up on the kitchen counter. We had used it for recipes, family photos, and video calls with relatives. It was still logged into his messages because Richard never worried about me seeing things. In his mind, I wouldn't know what mattered. The notification preview was from Elaine. Elaine, if she signs before discovery, you're clear. Don't let her stall. I stood very still. The shower was running upstairs. Steam fogged the hallway mirror. The house smelled faintly like the lemon cleaner I had used on the counters after dinner. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the tablet screen. Then another message appeared. Richard. She has no idea what she's entitled to. I'm not giving her time to get ideas. My hands went cold. That was the first time I understood Richard wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to get me to disappear on paper. The next clue came from Victor, an old friend of Richard's who stopped by one Saturday to return a set of golf clubs Richard had lent him. I was in the garage folding towels from the dryer when Victor leaned against the doorframe and said, too casually, "You two getting everything sorted?" "We're working through it," I said. Richard came in behind him, already tense. Victor looked at Richard. "Did you ever close out that other account? Or is that still sitting there?" The air changed. Richard's jaw tightened. "Wrong thing, wrong person. Don't worry about it." Victor's face flushed. "Right. Sorry. Mixed that up." He left 5 minutes later. I did not ask Richard about the account. I knew better by then. Questions gave him time to build a wall. Silence gave me time to find the door. The following Monday, I called Meredith Shaw. I got her name from a woman at my dentist's office who had once told me, while waiting for numbing gel to work, if you ever need a divorce attorney who doesn't enjoy drama but wins with paper, call Meredith. At the time, I laughed politely and hoped I never would. Meredith's office was on the second floor of a brick building with a glass conference table, gray chairs, and a receptionist who asked for my ID before offering me coffee from a machine that sounded like it was grinding gravel. I sat with my purse in my lap and a folder of things I had gathered: the settlement draft, screenshots from the tablet, bank letters I had found tucked behind tax forms, old inheritance documents from my aunt, and a page of handwritten questions. Meredith was 56, with short silver hair and the kind of direct eye contact that made nonsense feel embarrassed. She read silently for several minutes, turning pages without reaction. Finally, she tapped the settlement proposal with one finger. "Do not sign this." "I wasn't planning to." "Good. Do not argue about it in the family chat either." I almost smiled. "That obvious?" "Very." She looked at the screenshot from Elaine, then at Richard's message, then at the vague asset list. "You don't need to prove you're angry," she said. "You need to prove where the money went." For the next several weeks, I became the kind of quiet Richard had never prepared for. Not defeated quiet. Organized quiet. I gathered everything I could legally access. Bank statements from joint accounts, old tax returns, retirement account summaries, property records, insurance forms, beneficiary change notices, emails, and screenshots. The financial disclosure Richard eventually provided through his attorney. I labeled folders with dates. I made copies. I backed up files. When Richard tried to bait me, I gave him nothing useful. One evening, he stood in the kitchen watching me put a frozen lasagna in the oven because neither of us had the energy to pretend we were still a married couple who cooked. "You're dragging this out," he said. "No. I'm reviewing documents." "You're not qualified to review documents." "That's why I have counsel." His face sharpened. "Who?" I closed the oven door. "My attorney." For the first time in 34 years, I saw Richard fail to hide surprise. He recovered quickly. "You're wasting money." "Maybe. You think some lawyer is going to turn you into a financial expert? No, I picked up the oven mitts and folded them carefully. I think she'll ask questions you hoped I wouldn't. He stared at me. You lived comfortably because I allowed it. Comfort is not ownership, Richard. The next morning, he posted in the group chat again. Richard, I tried to keep this civil. Your mother has decided to involve attorneys and delay a fair resolution. I'm disappointed but not surprised. Caroline, please don't do this here. Richard, I'm only explaining because silence creates confusion. Daniel, what's confusing is why Mom asking for records bothers you. No one replied for a full minute. Then Richard wrote, Richard, because unnecessary conflict costs everyone. I took a screenshot. Then I sent it to Meredith. Me, do you want this one too? Meredith replied 10 minutes later. Meredith, yes. And do not respond. I didn't. That was harder than people think. There is a special kind of pain in watching someone narrate you falsely to your own children while you hold the proof in your hand. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to type until my fingers hurt. I wanted to say, your father is not sad. He is calculating. Your father is not protecting the family. He is protecting himself. But Meredith had warned me. Don't turn your children into a courtroom, she said. Let the legal process do its job. So I let Richard keep talking. And Richard loved to talk. He told Elaine I was getting ideas. He told Caroline I was being influenced. He told Daniel I never cared about the details until money was involved. He wrote all of it with the confidence of a man who had never imagined his words might one day be printed on paper and placed in front of a mediator. While Richard was busy shaping the family story, Meredith was following the money. The inheritance piece came first. Years earlier, my aunt had left me a modest inheritance through a trust. It wasn't life-changing money at the time. Richard barely paid attention when it happened because he assumed anything that came near our household eventually became part of his larger financial universe. But my aunt had been precise. The trust documents were clear. Some of the funds remained in an account in my name only, invested quietly over the years. Other amounts had moved in traceable ways that Meredith said mattered. I called the advisor listed on an old statement with a date so faded I had to hold it near a lamp. He was polite, cautious, and required several identity steps before he would discuss anything. Then he said, Mrs. Bennett, this account is still active. I gripped the phone. It is. Yes. There have been reinvestments over time. We can send updated statements to your current address or secure portal. I swallowed. Was Richard ever listed as an owner? No. Beneficiary history and account ownership are separate issues, but ownership has remained in your name. So this was never his account to control? That is correct. I sat on the edge of the bed after that call and cried quietly for about 3 minutes. Not because I had discovered some secret fortune. I had not. I was not suddenly rich. I did not have enough money to buy an island or ruin Richard's life with one signature. But I had enough to know I was not the helpless woman he had been selling to everyone. More importantly, I had proof. Then Meredith found the omissions. Richard's disclosure listed assets, debts, income, retirement accounts, and property interests. It looked complete if you did not know what was missing. Meredith did. She called me into her office on a Wednesday afternoon. The conference table was covered with statements, spreadsheets, and sticky notes in colors that made the whole thing look almost cheerful until I read the numbers. He didn't just forget a number, she said. He left out a pattern. She showed me transfers from a joint account shortly before filing. A property interest described so vaguely it might as well have been hidden in fog. A beneficiary change notice dated after the divorce conversation began. A retirement account value that didn't match the statement from the institution. And an account that lined up too neatly with Victor's accidental comment. Could it be a mistake? I asked. Meredith looked at me over her glasses. I nodded. Right. He may argue valuation. He may argue classification. He may argue timing. That's normal. But incomplete disclosure is not a personality quirk. I took a slow breath. What happens now? We request complete records. We prepare for mediation. And you keep doing exactly what you're doing. which is not giving him the reaction he wants. That weekend, Caroline called me crying. Mom, Dad said you refused the settlement and now everything is going to cost more. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a paper cup of coffee I had brought home from a drive-thru because the house felt less lonely when something disposable was in my hand. I refused to sign something without full information, I said. He said it was fair. He would say that. Are you trying to punish him? The question hit harder than I expected. Is that what you think? I don't know what to think. I just don't want this to get ugly. I stared at the blue folder on the table. Transfers, property, disclosure, trust, text, emails. Caroline, I said, keeping my voice steady, I didn't destroy the family. I stopped signing lies. She was quiet. I can't tell you everything, I said. Not because I'm hiding from you, but because you are my daughter, not my witness. But I need you to understand something. Asking for accuracy is not revenge. She sniffed. Dad made it sound like you wanted to take him apart. I'm trying to keep him from taking me apart. After we hung up, Daniel texted. Daniel, you okay? Me, I'm steady. Daniel. That doesn't answer the question. Me, it's the honest version. Daniel, Dad's pushing too hard. I stared at the message for a while before answering. Me, don't get in the middle. Daniel. I'm not. I'm just not blind. That was the first time I felt less alone. The mediation date arrived on a gray morning that smelled like rain on asphalt. I wore navy pants, a cream blouse, and the small earrings Caroline had given me for Mother's Day 5 years earlier. I put the blue folder in my tote bag even though Meredith had copies of everything. I wanted the weight of it with me. At the courthouse, people whispered in hallways as if volume might change outcomes. Attorneys walked fast with rolling briefcases. A clerk called names from a doorway with the tired rhythm of someone who had seen every version of human disappointment before lunch. Richard stood near the wall with his attorney, looking comfortable in a dark suit. Elaine was not allowed in the mediation room, but she had come anyway and sat on a bench near the elevator, clutching her purse like she was attending a performance. Richard saw me and smiled. Last chance to stop embarrassing yourself, he said softly. I held my paper cup of coffee with both hands. That's funny, I said. I was about to say the same thing. His smile disappeared. Meredith appeared beside me, carrying a briefcase and the same expression she probably wore while reading bad contracts. Don't engage, she said. I gave myself one sentence. That was a good one. Now stop. The mediation room was smaller than I expected. Beige walls, bottled water, a box of tissues, a stale pot of coffee on a side table. Legal pads were placed in front of each seat, as if we were about to take a test no one studied for honestly. The mediator was a dry, practical man with tired eyes and a calm voice. He explained the process. He said settlement required complete information. He said nobody was there to relitigate the marriage. Richard nodded solemnly through all of it, playing reasonable so well I almost admired the technique. Then his attorney summarized Richard's offer. It was dressed up better than the version at Caroline's dinner table, but it was the same skeleton. Limited payout, vague language, no meaningful discovery, quick resolution, move along quietly. Richard leaned forward when his attorney finished. I'm not trying to hurt Olivia, he said. I'm trying to keep this realistic. She hasn't handled the finances. She doesn't understand the numbers, and I think dragging this out only creates false expectations. Meredith wrote something on her legal pad. Richard kept going. I provided a comfortable life for a long time. I'm willing to be generous, but there has to be some acknowledgement of reality. The mediator looked at Meredith. Response. Meredith opened her folder, not the blue one, but a plain legal folder with copies clipped neatly inside. Before anyone discusses fairness, she said, we need to discuss accuracy. Richard's attorney shifted in his chair. Meredith slid the first set of documents across the table. Your disclosure omits an investment account ending in 4182. We have statements indicating activity before and after filing. Richard's face tightened. His attorney picked up the papers quickly. Meredith continued. There are also transfers from marital accounts in the months preceding the petition. The explanations provided so far are incomplete. Richard said. Those were ordinary movements of money. Meredith looked at him. Then full records should make that clear. The mediator glanced at Richard's attorney. Counsel. Richard's attorney said. We'll need to review those. Meredith placed another packet down. Property records also conflict with the characterization in the disclosure. Mr. Bennett appears to have overstated individual ownership, while ignoring traceable contributions and marital funds. Richard's voice hardened. That's not what happened. Meredith did not react. Then the records will be helpful. She placed a third packet down. Beneficiary change notices dated after divorce discussions began. Richard's attorney whispered something to him. Richard whispered back too loudly. This is ridiculous. Meredith placed the next packet on the table. Screenshots and emails suggesting an intent to pressure my client into signing before discovery. That was when Richard looked at me. Not at Meredith. Not at his attorney. At me. For 34 years he had believed silence meant ignorance. Now he was staring at the cost of that mistake. Meredith slid over the messages. Elaine. If she signs before discovery, you're clear. Don't let her stall. Richard. She has no idea what she's entitled to. I'm not giving her time to get ideas. The mediator read them without expression. Richard's attorney closed his eyes for half a second. Richard said, Private family frustration is not evidence of wrongdoing. Meredith replied, It is evidence of context. Then she reached for the trust documents. My client also has separate property documentation that needs to be recognized and protected. The current proposal does not do that. Richard laughed under his breath, but it came out wrong. Too sharp. Too late. She doesn't even know what those papers mean, he said. The room went still. Meredith looked at me. Not to rescue me. To give me the choice. I opened the blue folder in front of me. The tabs were neat because I had made them myself with a label maker Daniel gave me years earlier for organizing holiday bins. Transfers. Property. Disclosure. Trust. Text. Emails. I took out one statement and placed it beside Richard's offer. You thought I didn't know what we owned, I said. The truth is, I knew enough not to sign your version of it. Richard's cheeks flushed. You're trying to humiliate me, he said. No, I replied. You did that when you laughed at me for being the only person in this marriage who kept receipts. The mediator cleared his throat. We're going to pause. Counsel, I suggest you confer. Richard pushed back from the table. This is insane. She's been planning this. Meredith's voice stayed flat. She retained counsel and preserved records. That is not misconduct. I trusted her, Richard snapped. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after everything, he still thought trust meant the right to fool me without consequences. You were right about one thing, Richard, I said. I didn't argue about money at the dinner table. I saved it for the room where lying about it has consequences. His attorney stood and asked for a private break. The door closed behind them. For the first time that day, I let myself breathe all the way in. Meredith turned one page over on her legal pad. You're doing fine, she said. My hands are shaking under the table. That's allowed. Just keep them under the table. The first mediation did not end with dramatic justice. No judge slammed a gavel. No one gasped and declared Richard ruined. Real life rarely gives you that kind of clean scene. What happened was better because it was real. The original settlement proposal collapsed. Complete and accurate financial disclosure was required before any serious settlement discussion could continue. Records were requested. Transfers had to be explained. The omitted account could no longer be ignored. Richard's property claims were reviewed against actual documents, not his confidence. Beneficiary changes were scrutinized through proper legal channels. Temporary protections were put in place so accounts could not keep shifting, while everyone pretended it was normal. Richard walked out of that room looking older than he had when he walked in. Elaine stood up from the hallway bench when she saw him. What happened? She asked. Richard snapped, Ask Olivia. She brought props. I stopped beside her. I should have kept walking. Meredith probably wished I had. But Elaine had sat at my daughter's table, and told me to be realistic while helping Richard pressure me into signing away rights she did not understand. So I looked at her and said, "The props were bank records." Elaine's face went pale. "I didn't know," she said. "No," I said. "You didn't ask." Then I walked out. The weeks after that were not peaceful, but they were clearer. Richard stopped posting noble messages in the family group chat after Meredith's office sent a formal communication about preserving records and keeping financial matters between counsel. He did not stop insulting me. He just moved it to channels where it was less useful. One evening he called from a number I didn't recognize because I had stopped answering his direct calls. When I picked up he said, "You're cold." I almost hung up. "You're calculated," he continued. "Greedy too, apparently." "I'm ending this call." "You think you won because you embarrassed me?" "No, Richard. I think I finally understood the rules you were already playing by." He was silent for a second. "I gave you a life," he said. "I had a life. You kept putting your name over it. You're going to poison the kids against me. I have not told them half of what I could. You don't want fairness. You want revenge." I looked at the kitchen window, where my reflection looked tired but steady. "I don't want what isn't mine," I said. "I'm just done letting you call everything yours because I was quiet." Then I hung up and forwarded the call log to Meredith. 2 Sundays later, Caroline came to see me. She brought muffins from a bakery and looked like she had been crying in the car. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Richard had told me he filed after the paperwork was already in motion. She picked at the paper wrapper on her muffin. "Daniel told me there were messages," she said. "He shouldn't have gotten involved. He didn't tell me details. He just said Dad wasn't being honest." I folded my hands around my coffee mug. Caroline looked up. "Were you trying to protect us?" "Yes. Even from knowing what Dad did? Especially from having to carry it before you had to." Her eyes filled. "I asked you not to make it ugly. You were scared. I made it sound like you were the problem. You wanted the family to survive the story you had been given." She covered her mouth with one hand, and I watched my grown daughter become, for a moment, the little girl who used to cry when anyone raised their voice. "I'm sorry, Mom." I reached across the table and squeezed her wrist. "I know." Daniel's apology came differently. He came over with takeout, set the bags on the counter and said, "Dad made it sound like you were trying to take him apart." I opened the drawer for plates. "I was trying to keep him from taking me apart." Daniel nodded, jaw tight. "I'm proud of you," he said. I looked at him. He shrugged like he was embarrassed. "You kept receipts." That made me laugh for the first time in weeks. A real laugh. Small but mine. The final settlement took time. It took revised disclosures, more statements, attorney letters, tense meetings, and a level of patience I did not always feel. Richard did not lose everything. He was not thrown into the street. That was never the point, no matter what he told people. He lost something more important to him. He lost control of the story. He lost the ability to say Olivia doesn't understand, and have everyone accept it as fact. He lost the benefit of vague numbers. He lost the luxury of moving money in shadows while calling himself generous in daylight. He lost Elaine's automatic defense, at least for a while. She sent me one text months later that said, "I should have stayed out of it." I did not answer, but I did not delete it either. My separate property was protected. The marital assets were divided through a fair process, not Richard's highlighted fantasy. The omitted accounts were addressed. The transfers were accounted for. My estate documents and beneficiary designations were updated legally, with advice, after the proper orders allowed it. My personal accounts were secured. Communication with Richard went through attorneys until there was nothing left to negotiate except logistics. The day I signed the final papers, I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired. Meredith walked me to the reception area afterward. "You did well," she said. "I don't feel like I won." She looked at me for a moment. "That's because divorce isn't a prize. But you stopped a theft wearing a nice suit. That counts." Outside, I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel. The sky was bright in that plain, ordinary way that felt almost rude after such a long ending. People were walking in and out of the building carrying coffee, briefcases, purses, and lunch bags. The world had not paused for the end of my marriage. For a second that hurt. Then it helped. I thought about all the mornings I had let Richard explain my own life back to me. All the dinners where I smiled through jokes that were not jokes. All the times I chose peace when what I really chose was delay. I could not get those years back. I could not make Richard admit what he had done in a way that would satisfy the younger version of me, who once believed being loved meant being heard. But I could leave with my name still attached to what was mine. I could leave without begging him to see me clearly. I could leave without setting myself on fire just to prove I had been burned. Caroline called that night. "Do you want company?" she asked. "Not tonight, honey." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I'm going to make soup and watch something terrible on TV." She laughed softly. "That sounds healthy." "It sounds quiet." "Mom." "Yes. I'm glad you didn't sign." I closed my eyes. "Me too." Daniel texted later. "Daniel, dinner this weekend?" Me. "Only if you don't bring paperwork." Daniel, "I'll bring dessert. No folders." Me. "Good." For a long time, Richard had treated my silence like an empty room he could fill with his version of me. He called me confused, dependent, emotional, ungrateful. He said I would leave with what he decided I deserved because he had mistaken patience for permission. He was wrong. I did not walk out richer because I beat Richard. I walked out whole because I finally stopped letting him translate my silence as consent. And if people want to judge me for letting him mock me in front of everyone before I let the documents answer him, they can. I am done living inside rooms where his voice is the only evidence allowed. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.